created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx, low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, the text, and then everything's big metaverse bug. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
We're having a Masako moment, huh?
No, that's a code word. That's a code word that, we're too excited to move forward. No, well, I'm very excited because I've known Dr. Angel for a very long time. But before Dr. Angel comes on, we gotta say our co-host has joined as well, because you don't do AI without Lucky doing this chat. You know what I mean?
Right. Where Lucky at?
Lucky's in his new office. Look at that.
Lucky!
Hey, I'm getting there. I'm moving to a new spot in the house, and I'm still trying to get it worked out.
That's right. It's the new office that has new themes to it. Like you see the green screen behind it. Very professional, I would say.
Well, I'm getting there. It's I had to kind of get everything in. I was like, all right, click this in, click that in. Let's get it going. So today's kind of, I'm here. This is like the draft, pre-decisional content here, where I'm still kind of getting it worked out.
And of course, we got Bobby as well, because I messaged Bobby just kind of too late. I was like, Bobby, if you can, just join in, right? Because we love having these discussions about small businesses and how small business can benefit using artificial intelligence. And one person that has been there from the very top is Lucky and Bobby. I'm telling you why, because they helped me shift my narrative into just discussing AI to say, let's focus on one thing that you are going to be very passionate about, which is that military veterans transitioning out of military are probably not getting a lot of exposure to artificial intelligence. So we need to get them that exposure. And once they get that exposure, they can make a decision for themselves. But we have to educate them enough, sit them down, make them comfortable, and have them learn enough to ask those right questions, right? So this has been a mission for Lucky and myself, and Bobby's been there just coaching along, right? So when Bobby comes on the screen, yay, it's a big day. But I just lost Bobby. But let's introduce our next guest, because I'm going to jump off the screen, and I'm going to have Masako and Lucky talk to Dr. Angel. And when Dr. Angel is ready, we're going to put her presentation in first. We're going to put her on first, and then put her on presentation when she's ready to present. But let's start with an introduction of Dr. Angel Durr. Hello.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I am so excited to join you all today. Thank you for having me too.
Absolutely. And I think, as a small business owner, you create a community around you, right? And Dr. Angel is my community member, right? She's that village people that I have to say, like, you know what? Without you, I couldn't have gone that far, right? So she's been there pretty much from the very beginning, just like Bobby has, just like Lucky have, just like Masako have. But Dr. Angel has this whole new idea about how to do business in 2025 and where to start that business from, of course, from her own ambition, which she will talk about. But I will let Masako and Lucky sort of pick this up from here. And Dr. Angel, I know you're going to make an introduction of yourself, but one introduction, if I can make it, is that if you want to know data from multiple aspects and multiple perspectives, don't just rely on one person. You need somebody like her to bring that to the table and say, this is how you have to look at data, because the data that you're looking at is so valuable that you don't even know how valuable it is, right? So you have to have multiple people in the room observing your data sets and saying where the value lies. So Dr. Angel, good luck. I'll see you in a bit.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yes, my name is Dr. Angel Durr. and I have known Asif for a very long time, and I'm so grateful for him inviting me here to talk more about some of the things that I've seen and done in the space. And I can go ahead and kick it off. And if you have any specific questions you want me to answer, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I can just kind of jump in with an introduction.
Yeah, please tell us more, because I'm sure we're all eager to find, to hear from data scientists. I've done a little bit myself, but it's great to hear from a fellow data scientist and really kind of give your perspective. So please jump in.
And I will start by saying that what I'm going to say here today represents my own thoughts and feelings with that in mind, and not anyone else's. I'm here representing myself and the things that I've seen in this space and heard over the course of my lifetime and my own sort of professional experiences. So that'll be sort of my angle. But I am a Navy brat turned technologist, so the conversation is very well received. I'm a researcher, a scientist, an entrepreneur, and then I also do a little data science as well. But it isn't necessarily my home base like it is for a lot of people. I've worn a lot of different hats across IT over the years. I started out actually as the business manager for my dad's small business after he got out of the Navy, and I worked in his logistic operation most of my childhood. And so I learned business operations from the inside out, seeing it in small business context firsthand. And that's really driven my journey professionally, and sort of my hunger and thirst for more technology, expertise and knowledge and awareness. So I didn't just stop at data science. I went into analytics. I went into database administration. I went into front-end development. I went into back-end development, website development, you name it, UX strategy. And now I work in IT strategy because I have seen all of these different areas and innovation, particularly because at the end of the day, I've always been chasing sort of that really far off in the distant technology that seems to be the answer to all of our problems. And that's sort of changed over the course of my professional career. My first big break, though, was for Cambridge Analytica, where I interned when I was in college working on the Obama campaign, working as a political analyst and doing qualitative and quantitative data work, and also some mapping, data mapping as well, and graph design and graph theory, which was really very niche at the time, and a really completely different way of looking at data that has only now really started to evolve. So we were looking at all these different areas and trying to understand this data thing that we had our arms sort of somewhat wrapped around. And that has really led me to where I am now. And today, I primarily work as a consultant and strategist, working across different verticals, including government, healthcare, finance, and other high-risk sectors like manufacturing, construction, and logistics. But I also teach innovation, and I also happen to be a scientist living with disabilities. So I know that a lot of times these systems are not necessarily designed with diverse individuals in mind. And so part of my drive in AI was kind of looking to level the playing field because I have autism also. And so for me, it was a way for me to feel more like everyone else, to be able to prompt and script and do some of the things we talked about earlier. Those just kind of came naturally to me as someone with autism. And those were just sort of some of the things that I gravitated towards when it came to utilizing AI. So I also know that AI can be this enabler that can bring people to the table that otherwise probably wouldn't have gotten those opportunities. Like for me personally, the way my professional career has taken off since I did start incorporating AI solutions in these different areas has really just been immeasurable, and it has changed my life in ways I could never imagine. But I really care most about using AI to kind of change the narrative that AI is this dangerous monster that's ultimately going to just like destroy society, and look at a research first approach to using AI and deep learning that really teases out some of the most beneficial use cases that we aren't really discussing. And so I'm really studying the landscape the risks, the incentives, the human experiences that are really happening out there. And I'm constantly asking, like, who is this AI actually serving, and what does success look like utilizing AI, and what are the areas that we need to sort of disrupt? And so more than an AI user and a data scientist, I'm a disruptor. I want to disrupt things, and I want things to look different than they look now, because I think if AI is really the solution to all these problems that we think it is, then it's a way for us to wrestle our humanity out of these systems that have kind of trained us and turned us into the robots. And unfortunately, and I'm ready for the tables to truly turn. And for me, it's about community. And I'm so glad that was mentioned, because you're not behind if you don't feel like you're, as AI savvy as everyone else, or you're not having these buzzword conversations. That doesn't mean that you're not capable of joining us. It's about finding community, and about finding community that you can trust. And it's also about engaging and learning in bite-sized pieces, and not feeling like you're just going to learn everything about AI Tuesday night after your kids go to bed, which I know there's those midnight warriors that are like, I'm just going to sit down for 8 hours and learn everything I can. That's fabulous.
Right. Yeah, that's a dream.
It's a fabulous approach, but let me caution you and let you know that, from a science standpoint, think about the humanity in this, and think about the fact that you are a human. You were not made to sit up for 8 hours and learn everything about AI. Use the AI to help you. If you need the AI to break it down like you're a 5th grader with little to no expertise, then say that. AI is so much about communication, which is the interesting part, because I think part of using AI so much has kind of stripped people of the ability to communicate things, because it's often just assumed that certain things. And so you need to talk to AI like you are talking to an alien, essentially. And you need to be telling it, like, talk to me like I'm a 5th grader. AI doesn't know you any better than, your neighbor a couple doors down knows you. So you really have to get to know the AI. You need to start asking AI, who am I? That's one of my favorite prompts. Who am I, Angel Durr? And it'll tell me all the different things it finds about me from online and stuff, and gives me my online persona. So, it has to start to get to know you, which was kind of mentioned at the beginning, giving it prompts to start to know who you are and identify you based on scripts. I think that's a great way to approach it, because every AI is its own proprietary solution. And so, you talk to ChatGPT, that's just one AI. There's so many other models out there that you can engage with. So if you have sort of almost like a business card that you can give them and say, this is who I am, this is what you need to know about me, that makes things kind of easier to get things going, because knowing who you are is the first step to using AI too. It's just as much about knowing who you are as building a community. Do you know who you are, and do you know what your real goals are? And you have to be able to communicate that in whatever way makes sense to you. And maybe you're not the typer, maybe you're the audio person. So I do love the fact that AI has thought about the fact that maybe everybody doesn't want to write this long story about what they're looking for. Maybe I just want to quickly record something and see what it brings back. And there's flexibility built in for people with different needs, with that being the case, which I think is really valuable. But I think it's the combination of learning in bite-sized chunks, micro-learning, and building community. That's what it takes to really have the skills necessary to survive in this sort of AI environment. Because as machines are getting smarter, we have to become more human. That's our differentiator as the machines get smarter. Our differentiator is still that we are human beings with human feelings and needs. And, we breathe, we need art, we need all these different things that AI doesn't need. So it's important for us to, get our outside time and stuff as humans, and remember first and foremost that we are still superior to any AI, because we have a level of empathy and fairness and trustworthiness kind of embedded in our own software. Sometimes, not everybody, some of us do. And it's just embedded there. We didn't have to think about it. It was just there. And with AI, it has to be trained to know those things like a child. And so for me, I also look at the relationship I have with AI as like a parent and a child. And I'm thinking about, what do I want AI to think about me and how I engage, and how do I want it to engage with me? And so I want to engage with it in a way where it's learning from me and building upon what I already do well versus, not. And, the not is definitely what you don't want. So when we think about human first, we talked a little bit about the surge in cybercrime, but that's actually what my TED Talk that Asif mentioned earlier. I do have a TED Talk, and it's about cybercrime. And a lot of my technology innovation solutions come from things that I've seen firsthand and things that I've experienced, including cybercrime. In addition to having a dad in the military, I had a mom who was a cyber criminal, who really was very good with technology, worked at Sabre, was a coder, but decided to kind of take a different route. And because of that, I understand the importance of technology being safe, and providing trustworthy solutions with guardrails. And so one of the things I'm focused on now, outside of my day-to-day work at JP Morgan Chase, which I'm the VP at, is really looking at technology and the systems that we use in these really high risk environments. And, you think we all have it all, figured out at the very top, but some of the same safety issues and trust issues that you have in a small business, you have in a big business, you have in a mid-sized business. Everyone is worried about fraud. Everyone is worried about safety. Everyone is worried about risk. Those are, no matter what size your business is, those are things you're worried about. Those are threats that you're worried about happening to your business. And especially depending on the type of business, if you are a government related person, and maybe you're a government contractor like my dad was, and you're working as someone who has a security clearance, which my dad did, on these government projects, and maybe you have to create this infrastructure around the projects you're doing because you are working with these high risk systems, and there's a certain level of regulatory and compliance that needs to be embedded in what you're working on that just often isn't native to any of the solutions available, whether it's for a small business, a mid-sized business, or a very large business. And so for the majority of businesses, what's really eating up time that's reducing the ability to innovate and use AI efficiently is auditing. And it's the most unsexy part of the technology AI discussion, but it's unfortunately the elephant in the room. Because when you're asking yourself, why is Doge happening? Why are these big things happening around these government systems and all of these different entities? A lot of it is because they're living in survival mode, responding to audits and either reacting to an audit that just happened, or they're preparing for an audit that's happening in the future. And that's what really kind of hinders a lot of organizations from really investing in AI like you would expect them to. It's not that they don't have the knowledge. It's not that they don't have the money. It's not that they don't have the awareness. It's that they're scared of the audit and regulatory risk that they open themselves up to. It's a can of worms that they're not really comfortable opening. And I definitely can appreciate that, because there's a lot of people looking out there to take advantage of you and your business. And so it is worth investing in the things that you need to invest in to ensure that you have the back end things set up that would allow you to have structure for compliance and cybersecurity and audit prep and even ethical oversight of your AI, because just because you have an AI doesn't mean it's ethical, and doesn't mean that you really even understand what that means, or you have the capability to even question whether or not your AI is ethical, because there's what we call a black box built in, where it's literally a black box. You can't get in. You don't know how the model's made. You don't know how the cheese is made. And if you try to ask, you're going to get some vague answer. And so if you do want to question the how well your models are performing and things like that, it can be hard to really do the audit trail that you expect to be able to do to check and balance your technology. And I think it's, a part of the conversation that is rarely discussed, but is really, really important. And it's something that I'm personally very passionate about. And so I have really worked over the last few months to kind of hone in on some areas of AI that I don't think are being really discussed. And one of those is compliance as a solution, which very unsexy when we talk about all of the different services out there that you could get. Compliance as a service is not, high on the bucket when people are talking, but I think it's something that needs to become a bigger part of the conversation with that in mind. And then I think how we look at AI MSPs, which are managed service providers, which are very common in this space, because a lot of, even the biggest of companies down to the smallest of companies, just because you use AI doesn't mean you want to manage it. Maybe you want to offload it to somebody else because you don't want to have to sit there and learn every new AI trend that comes out. So you offload it to someone. Well, how do you know that they're ethical and how they're doing things and that they're not just upselling you and things like that? So those are areas that I'm really interested in, and I'm really interested in making safe, scalable technology that has auditing built into it and really asking the questions up front in order to ensure things really are ethical. And if they're not, you know how to figure out what's going on, and you can ask questions of the technology and get the answers you're looking for instead of getting just more questions, unfortunately. And one of the biggest drivers in this that I'm really focused on is, actual problems that I'd like to be able to solve is looking at, my dad is a disabled veteran. So with that comes a lot of paperwork. I would love to see workflows like this be some of the first sort of things that we tackle, because risk is always the primary reason why we see a lot of heavily manually driven processes not kind of engaging in the discussion around AI workflows. And so I'd like to see some of these areas where we still have a lot of paperwork be automated first and have the discussions around risk and compliance and regulatory upfront so that we can figure out ways to work around them. And then also talk about innovation as a product and how we can make innovation as a product move forward in a way that's compliant and audit friendly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I work with AI quite a bit and designing, and the big issue that I find is what is the risk? When you look at different AI, you hit it right on the head. You have open and then you have closed box AI. What is in that? What are you doing? How is it trained? What is the bias? You have startup companies that were still trying to, get funding and develop, in 6 months, they're selling their AI out there. And you're like, okay, what customers, what have you done?
And how do I know that it's not just a bunch of people in a room somewhere and that it's truly AI?
Oh, that's funny. You're right about that. They could be in a van outside, typing up the prompts, And yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's a high risk there. But, and that's where I believe that if an organization is going to take the time to invest in AI, they really need to not make just a monetary investment, but they need to put time and resources into the development of an AI solution for an organization. Now, it's hard to say that if you're a mom and pop shop and you're trying to, but, to each is their own. They'll figure out, what the need is and how you can make an angle or use an angle of AI. At the end, I look at AI as an appendage. It's going to make you make smarter decisions, but it's not going to own who you are. And if you take that and you empower people with AI, there's going to be a great benefit there. But again, it's getting to that point and understanding because sometimes you think AI is going to come in and do everything for us. Well, what's everything? And so I completely agree. You have to just take the time and really work at it. And there's a lot of risk in AI, depending on, one is, you hit it earlier in your, what you talked about is data and what data vectors are you using? Are they trustworthy? Are they ethical? Those are huge questions. And how do you get to that point? You've got to have people that, are willing to ask the hard questions and are just not willing to just swipe a credit card and say, we've bought it. We've got it.
Right. I have a
We
question.
signed.
I have a question, Dr. Angel. There's two things
Yes.
that stood out to me when I was listening to you: compliance, and then creating systems for risk management for those that are disabled. My question to you comes in the space of the mom and pop, because oftentimes they think of themselves as a small business, someone that is open to risk.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around, how does a mom and pop organization audit their own AI if they're utilizing AI within their space?
So that's a great question. And honestly, it's really challenging. So if that's one of the reasons that you haven't adopted AI, I completely understand. It's not easy. And those should be, though, the kinds of questions, most importantly, that you're asking up front, instead of just blindly kind of accepting that, you're going to just give your information over. Because one of the biggest areas is knowing that everything that you're discussing with that AI is basically publicly accessible. And so you should treat it as such. You should treat that data like it is publicly accessible. And a small business especially shouldn't be just sharing their IP out in the world with, everyone. So I think it is definitely a very critical conversation to have before adopting any technology like AI solutions, to really ask the question of where does this lie? What are we sort of handing over? It's a negotiation process. And I know Asif, of all people, probably knows better than anyone about the negotiation process. But it really is. You're giving up something, and you need to know what kind of risk am I taking on by giving up this information. My advice is be very careful about giving over any information that you wouldn't be comfortable just giving to a complete stranger, because that's what you should be treating this interaction like. And so with that means not just using AI for anything, but also thinking about the risk associated with this specific information out. And so maybe you don't share every single detail. You're very general in your prompts, knowing that that makes it easier for it not to have any like real data around what you're trying to ultimately accomplish. Like sometimes I'll take a problem apart and I'll take it into different pieces, and I'll put one part of the question in one AI tool, and then I'll put one part of the question in another AI tool, and I'll do my own like little, risk mitigation. So sometimes you have to get a little creative. I would definitely say diversify your technology too. Don't put all of your proprietary information into one solution and expect, it to be secure. I think it's better if you have data over here, data over here, data over here. At least all of your data isn't centrally stored in one place, so that if that one entity goes down or does have some kind of leakage, you're completely exposed. So I think it is smart to keep some things stored separately with the expectation that that data will still come together at different points, but coming together in ways that minimize the risk for you. So think about what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with, first and foremost. Think about how to use the technology in a way that's a little bit more general versus getting into the nitty gritty of your business and your secret sauce and all of that sort of a thing. Unless you do kind of think about getting certain types of subscriptions at the business level so that you can ensure that you are protected. But if you are engaging with solutions as just an individual, you definitely want to come in with the mindset of, what would I be comfortable telling a complete stranger about my business? And if you're not comfortable telling a complete stranger, then don't tell AI that stuff. And I think that's the best way to approach it, honestly, at this point, because there is a great deal of risk, and there's very little in terms of safety precautions or measures in place to really mitigate you as a small to mid-sized business owner being the victim of something. Make sure you have any type of AI insurance too if you are engaging with AI. That's another thing. There is technology insurances that you can specifically look into that are AI specific and data specific. Those will help and add another layer of protection. I definitely recommend taking those extra steps if you are going to be engaging with AI in your business.
Excellent answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ken received a few questions through the text, and I think one of them was number 3. I think because you mentioned the first two, you kind of just answered right now. Number 3 is AI. Can it think critically and solve problems? If so, how? So I guess one more time is AI. Can it think critically and solve problems? If so, how? It's a very deep question, but I think it's worth
It
exploring
is.
a little bit.
It is. I think it definitely can give you the tools to solve a problem, but I think the biggest piece that's missing from this is the AI is in your computer. It doesn't have arms and legs to get up and move out in the world and actually make these things a reality. That still falls on you as the human being, the human in the machine, so to speak. And so you still have to do the legwork and get up and make things happen. It is kind of similar to the relationship a lot of people have with God, where, you know, you can pray to God to bring you something, but you have to get up off your butt too and like take some of the action as a Christian to like see those things happen. And it's the same kind of a relationship with this, where yes, it can give you great information, but you have to take that information and turn it into something actionable as the human being. So what are you going to do with this great solution that it gave you? Are you going to get up and actually see it happen and, you know, get the resources, do everything that's required? I mean, because otherwise it's just giving you a response, and it's up to you to take the legwork to see it actually become a reality. But I've seen firsthand how if you treat AI like a partner, it can really, you know, take the work that you're already doing and multiply it times 10 at least, and really maximize the effort you're already putting in. But just like with praying, it's going to maximize the effort that you're bringing to the table. So baby, you got to get up and do something to see something happen. So, you know, that's how I look at AI, and that's my advice for folks too that are struggling with that part of it.
Yeah.
Dr. Durr, I'm enjoying listening to you, the alumni chair for the ROSIE Network. And so I've had a couple people been texting me throughout, so they're really enjoying this. So if you don't mind, another question I had, and this is from a startup person: what are the legal risks for businesses? Can another business end up with your ideas based on your prompts? And in what scenarios can entrepreneurs be sued or accused of fraud for using AI-generated content?
So that's definitely still something that's coming out. Honestly,
That's
those are really
Chat
great
GPT
questions.
and New York Times.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say, great
Look that up on
question.
Google.
It's happening right now, honestly, in real time. And like I said, the legislation, I'm a political science background person. So the legislation is still kind of coming out as far as how AI is being treated from a legal standpoint, and what is allowed, what we're allowed to use AI and what we're not allowed to use AI for. I mean, I've seen people, one of the most interesting use cases I saw recently was a guy that brought his computer into the courtroom with him and was using his AI to be his lawyer. And I mean, is it something that anyone's ever done before? No. So we don't really know if it's allowed, but he did it. And the judge was just kind of like, okay, I guess this is happening. So I think it's really a fuck around and find out kind of a situation where people are just trying to see what they can get away with ultimately. So this is a good time to try things and see what you can do and what you can't do. And we do have some guardrails, but they're very minimal. And a lot of times it's on you as the individual, with it still being this Wild West, sort of to speak, to protect yourself. So a lot of the protection lands in your lap. And if you are taking on the risk and the responsibility of positioning something in a market like this, that's just a necessary evil. It's like if you open a store, you know, you're going to have people physically come in and shoplift. So what are you going to do to prevent it? And the same physical, risk of theft that we had in a physical space has just transitioned to the digital space. So I would say take it a step back and just think about business overall. And, for the last 100 years, what are the things that businesses have always sort of had to think about? And how are those same things now happening in a digital space? And how does the way that we react to those things really kind of similar, but it just needs to kind of shift to thinking about it in this new context, in that these things are happening digitally versus physically, but they're still the same thing. You still have the risk as an entrepreneur of someone coming in and taking your IP. That's always going to be a risk, whether it's AI or not. So I think you should, like I said, treat AI like a complete stranger, and think about the fact that if you're just using a free account, you don't have any sort of anything. And now they're using subpoenas to get OpenAI information for folks. So I definitely think you should be treating any AI solution like it is a complete stranger. Give it minimal amounts of information, build a story on your own using, a variety of different technological resources. Don't just rely on one AI to do everything for you with that in mind. Be, a little bit more stealth about it. Like even with my smart home technology, I, as a person who understands the back end of data, I don't just have one ecosystem. Why? It's not because it's not convenient. It's not great. I don't want somebody owning all my data and being able to just do whatever they want with everything about me. So I specifically made the choice to diversify my technology. And people rarely make that kind of a statement because most of us have an allegiance to certain technologies. But I think it's much safer to just protect yourself by, being agnostic yourself to technology and not being a diehard Apple person, not being a diehard Microsoft person. It's great to be a slave to an ecosystem, but sometimes it can come back to bite you. So that's one of the other things I definitely think is something that as a small business owner, you should think about. Don't just commit to one ecosystem and just hand over everything, because you are essentially handing over the keys to one entity and hoping that they handle your information the way that you want them to.
Yeah. And I just have one more, and I'm going to wrap these two entrepreneurs' questions into one for you. There's two different entrepreneurs. What would you recommend as measures to keep a business safe when it comes to compliance? And what are some effective prompts to disaggregate data or to identify trends? And kind of speaking to what you spoke to just a minute ago, what other platforms besides ChatGPT should they be looking into?
Yeah, so I'm glad you're asking. So I definitely, when it comes to just like the language models that we're using on a day-to-day basis, think ChatGPT, having that, one-on-one sort of conversational AI tool. There's definitely ChatGPT. That's one. There's also Gemini. There's also Claude. There's also DeepSeek. Those are the ones that I kind of float the most. But there's other ones that are also coming out as we speak that I'm also kind of playing with on the back end. So those are the ones that I stand by at this point because I've tested them for, months on end and just played with them. And I will say that they all sort of have their own spin on things, their own little flavor as in terms of even what they do well. So I think that's still something that's kind of coming out of the woodwork. Like, for example, ChatGPT is great with small amounts of information, but once you start to use a lot of if you have like a large document that's like over 50 pages, it can get really bogged down and start hallucinating. Gemini, much better with large data sets. It can definitely handle a large data set with a lot more specificity. Claude, think of Claude like Shakespeare. If you want something written very like well and artsy, like go to Claude. I mean, the name kind of tells you. And I like that about from a product standpoint, the way that they kind of provide a human personality, because sometimes it really fits, like in the example of Claude. And then DeepSeek is a catch-all. Its models sort of built on a lot of the other models. So it's kind of ingesting all these other models and spitting out a combination of them. And it's really good in that you don't really need to get into a lot of heavy detail. It can jump right into a topic. So that's just my short, fast, broad overview of some of the most common technology, AI solutions, natural language learning model tools that are out there that you can kind of play with, and get immediately into AI right now while you're sitting in your bathrobe at home. They all have free versions that you can engage with too, which gives you the chance to play. And honestly, that's the other way that you're going to learn and get comfortable with this. But I think thinking about compliance from the very beginning, It's important to understand what regulations are important for you to think about for your specific industry. Like if you're in healthcare, you need to think about HIPAA. If you have any sort of website or anything, you have to think about things like GDPR. If you're thinking about, marketing globally, you also have to think about what countries you're doing business in and what specific regulations they have in the countries that you're doing business in. So it really is going to vary from business to business. But I think the most important thing is understanding any sort of regulation that might exist. And if there is regulation in your industry, and asking those questions, are there any sort of, legislative pieces that would apply to the type of business I have too? And those are good questions to ask ChatGPT and other large language models. What sort of regulations and compliance issues are specific to this industry? If you have a business in blah, 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 and you do blah, 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 that's a great prompt for you to start with in terms of starting to ask that question. And then I think from a prevention standpoint, having basic controls like access management and single sign-on and encryption, all those sorts of things are really important. If you do have technology, you want to protect it. So you need to have controls in place to protect it. And streamlining your operations is critical, and thinking about resilience at the other side of it and readiness to any sort of potential things that could come down the pipeline. So thinking about whatever risks might come down the pipeline based on the type of infrastructure you have. That's a great thing to hand over to ChatGPT. What sort of risks do I need to worry about as a blah, blah, blah business? You're not giving it any specific details, but you are giving it a prompt and letting it kind of see where it goes. So hopefully that answered your question and gave you some examples of some prompts that you might be able to use to ask them to answer some of these things for your own business.
Thank you very much. So all those people that sent me those questions, look, you got it right there from Dr. Durr, not from me.
No, this questions are so on point, and I'm wondering who's asking this question.
There's some of our alumni that have been texting me. I've literally just read them, 4 different people.
Directly would love to have you come live and ask us questions, because I bet you guys are gonna ask some questions that usually will never come to the surface. But now that it did, it's important that I hit on it, and I'll let Bobby speak on this as well, because as an architect in the high level, we have to deal with so many different, I would say, pipeline that comes from the top, right? So what is happening with ChatGPT and New York Times is crucial to understand what the compliance that Dr. Angel was talking about and the regulations and the governance behind it. So if you just take that as a case study, you can unfold Sarbanes-Oxley that tells you that, hey, if the law says something, everything's got to stop, because you no longer are allowed to delete anything.
Yeah, and that can happen too.
What happens to a large language model that's taking in information? Now you are not allowed to delete anything because your large language model is part of the evidence stream, right? So when somebody's doing digital forensics and you don't know nothing about digital forensics because you're so excited about getting started with the business, and here you are dealing with digital forensics that comes to the pipeline, not today, not tomorrow, but 5 years down the road. And you, as a person who's just saying, I have a great idea, great startup, I'm using ChatGPT to do all kinds of fancy $1 million business. And here we are 5 years later, that digital forensics, Sarbanes-Oxley kicks in because somehow you are in a financial industry.
Yeah, and it's not the sexy part of AI that we want to talk about, in these conversations where we're talking about all the cool, shiny new tools, but it's just as important to think about safety in using these technologies.
Yeah. So let me have Bobby jump in, because this is some of the things that we talk offline about, and Bobby will say, yeah, I remember that event. So Bobby, welcome. I know you had some technical issue, but let us hear your thoughts. I know you've been hearing a whole lot of things being discussed here, but let's bring you on and then get started with your thoughts here.
Yes, well, it's an absolutely amazing discussion, and I'm just really having a great time just learning and listening to different perspectives and points of view. I think it's important that people understand that there's layers to this thing. Yeah. So when you're talking about doing stuff for your business, how tech savvy are you really? One of the things that happened when we moved years ago to Windows was, if you can click next, you're some type of administrator. And if it goes all the way to finish, then you're a really good administrator, whether your stuff was configured right or not. And we're back in the same place again. When you're using various tools, if it's serious oversight, serious compliance, and risk management and mitigation of said risk, you may want to consider the tools that you use, using stuff that's more industry standard with AI enhancements in it. So as she was telling us before, so you can do transfer that risk of maintaining and configuring those things to those people who are better equipped for it. When you're coming up with your secret sauce, I think artificial intelligence is an amazing tool. But if you're mom and pop and you're dealing with federal laws and interfacing with major corporations, maybe the tools that you use, and pretty much we talked about this before, that part of artificial intelligence is going to be baked into a lot of stuff and really revolving around the checking aspect or the compliance aspect. But if you're not a subject matter expert in said field that you want to then explore with AI, just be careful. Be careful, because she gave a great example of bringing the laptop with the AI agent into the courtroom. Well, the judge's position was not just you can't use that AI, it is illegal to practice law without a law license. Great model, it can know a lot of information, but does that model have a law license, right? Or do you want an all digital doctor, or someone with on-hand practical experience and then uses all of the wonderful things about AI to help go through and better diagnose? So all of these things work in layers to come up with what is safe AI to you. So for example, let's say you want to use a product that ends in pilot, right? Not trying to besmirch anybody's product. Or, a product from another vendor that ends in intelligence. Well, the way a lot of that stuff works is taking screenshots and recording everything you do on the screen. So whereas before in various types of investigation, everything from financial to equal opportunity to anything that comes up corporately, when an investigation is conducted, they always used to teach us that even the desk calendars can be confiscated, where you're just jotting down whatever it is you're doing. Well, now everything you've done is a desk calendar, because what did your AI tool do? Take snapshots of everything that you've done. Are you ready for that? So these are just questions to look at, and not to scare anyone at all, just to think things through. What are the things I'm good at? What are the things that I am not a subject matter expert? What things require a license in order to do so? You can get an opinion from an AI tool, but you can't go to court with an AI tool, right? Yeah. So just know that place where the real world clashes with the current state of the art. As previously stated, the laws will take years to catch up with what's available. That on top of that, add to the fact that in this race for AI, the current state is such. We all know that we want to operate ethically, and some of us are trying to do so. Most companies have a face of ethics, of this is how we're going to do it. But at the end of the day, it's a race. So no one wants to lose that race. So where do they, without saying so, slip up on ethics or say, no one else is doing it, so why would we lose the advantage? It can be, in niche markets that's happening in some type of tool, but it also can be whole countries. Right now, if you look at the data race between the superpowers that be, everybody knows what's needed as far as how do we put humans in the loop and where, but nobody wants to win this race. They think it's so important that nobody is really fully acting ethically, whether they say it or not, because they believe it is more important to win than to win ethically. What do y'all think?